When the snow falls too quietly, it means something out there is listening. And once it finds warmth, it never leaves. The storm hit harder than the forecast warned. By the time Daniel and Rose reached the edge of Hollow Creek, the world outside had turned into a white void, sky and ground blending together in one endless sheet of snow. Their SUV's tires crunched over ice, the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the swirling flakes. It was supposed to be a quiet Christmas, a week away from noise, work, and people. But as they followed the narrow, winding road deeper into the woods, the silence became unsettling. Even the radio refused to work, whispering static like a faint voice beneath the noise of the storm. Rose leaned closer to the window, watching trees bend under the wind. "Are you sure this is the right turn?" she asked. Daniel nodded, squinting at the GPS, but the screen had already frozen. No signal, no map, no help. He sighed. "Yeah, it should be right up ahead." But there was doubt in his voice. And somewhere between the last road sign and the falling snow, something in the forest seemed to move, too tall, too still. The road narrowed until it was barely wide enough for one car. Snow piled up on either side like white walls closing in, and every few seconds, Daniel had to lean forward, trying to make out the turn ahead through the windshield fog. The wipers squealed, dry, desperate sounds scraping glass, and Rose could feel the tension in his hands gripping the steering wheel. "There's nothing out here," she murmured. Her voice sounded small inside the car, like it didn't belong to her. No houses, no signs, not even tire tracks. Just an empty, endless forest, waiting. The engine hummed too loud against the silence, the kind of noise that made you realize how alone you really were. Then, through the blur of snow, a faint yellow glow appeared ahead. A porch light, swaying in the storm. Relief flickered on Daniel's face. "There," he said. "Told you." But as they got closer, that relief turned into confusion. The cabin looked old. Too old. Not like the cozy, newly renovated place shown in the listing photos. Its wood was faded and cracked, and the roof drooped beneath years of snow. The light outside flickered weakly, as if fighting to stay alive. They parked. The moment Daniel turned off the engine, the world went dead silent. No wind, no creaking trees, just stillness. Rose hesitated before opening her door. The air outside was colder than she thought possible, slicing through her coat the instant she stepped out. The snow crunched under her boots, deep and soft. There were footprints already leading up to the door. Not fresh, but not old either. Daniel noticed them too. "Maybe the owner came to leave the heat on," he said, though his tone made it sound more like a question than an answer. When they reached the porch, the wooden boards groaned under their weight. The door was slightly ajar. Not wide, just enough for wind to breathe through it. Daniel knocked once. No answer. He looked back at Rose, shrugged, and pushed the door open. Inside, the darkness felt heavier than the storm outside. The first thing that hit them was the smell. Old wood, damp air, and something faintly metallic beneath it, like rust or blood long dried. Daniel switched on his phone flashlight, and the narrow beam sliced through the dark, catching clouds of dust dancing in the air. The cabin was silent except for the occasional groan of timber settling under the weight of snow. The living room looked abandoned, not prepared for guests. Furniture covered with white sheets, a fireplace filled with gray ash, and cold air leaking from the gaps between the window frames. On the far wall hung a painting, a winter landscape that looked eerily similar to the forest outside, except there was a small black figure standing among the trees, its face blurred, as if the paint refused to hold its shape. Rose's breath trembled in the cold. "This doesn't look like the pictures," she whispered. Daniel didn't reply. He moved closer to the fireplace, kneeling to inspect it. "Maybe the cleaner didn't show up," he muttered, trying to sound casual. But his voice broke slightly. Then he noticed something strange. A stack of firewood already placed neatly beside the hearth. Each log was cut perfectly, cleanly, but damp with melted snow. Someone had been there recently. Someone who came in from the storm. Rose pointed to the corner near the door. A pair of boots sat there, dusted with snow. They were not theirs. She stared at them, frozen. while Daniel straightened up, his eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. "Maybe the owner left them," Rose said softly, though she didn't sound convinced. Daniel nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, maybe." He set their bags down and walked to the window. The forest outside was black. Not the kind of black that comes from night, but the kind that swallows light completely. Something about it felt wrong. Too still. No wind. No movement. No sound of snow falling anymore. When he turned back, Rose was standing in front of the painting again, staring at the blurred figure. "Dan, in the listing photo, this painting wasn't here." He joined her. The figure in the artwork, that dark, faceless shape, now seemed closer to the cabin than before. The brushstrokes looked wet, fresh. The fireplace hissed as Daniel finally managed to get a weak flame going. It didn't bring much warmth, but it gave the illusion of safety, that fragile comfort that light always offers when the dark feels too close. Rose sat near it, holding her hands out, her fingers trembling slightly, not just from the cold. The storm outside roared against the walls now, the windows rattling like something was trying to get in. Every few seconds, the porch light flickered, throwing shadows across the room in erratic patterns. It felt like the cabin was breathing, expanding and contracting with each gust of wind. Daniel unpacked their things, pretending not to notice how uneasy Rose looked. She kept glancing toward the door, toward those boots still sitting by the entrance. "We should call the owner," she said, "just to make sure no one else is staying here." He agreed and pulled out his phone. No signal. Not even a single bar. "We'll try again in the morning," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Rose didn't argue. She just wrapped herself in a blanket and stared at the fire, her reflection flickering in the glass of the old photo frame on the mantel. It was then that she noticed it. The frame didn't hold a single photo, it held several. The top one showed a family, 2 parents, a daughter, and a little boy, standing in front of this same cabin. But beneath it, barely visible, were older photographs layered underneath, each one showing the same scene, the same family, but with one small difference. In every photo, the faces became less clear. First the fathers, then the mothers. The outlines smudged, as if someone had dragged their fingers across wet ink. The final photo was the worst. Only the daughter remained visible, and she was standing alone in the snow, facing the cabin, her face turned away from the camera. Rose's heart began to race. She stood up, her blanket falling to the floor. "Daniel, come look at this." He sighed, setting down the log he was about to place in the fire, but before he could stand, a sharp knock echoed through the cabin. Once, then again, 3 times. Slow, deliberate. Both froze. The sound came from the front door, the same one they'd closed tightly just minutes ago. Daniel whispered, "It's probably the owner," but the look in his eyes said otherwise. The storm outside had gone quiet again. No wind, no snow, just that sound, like knuckles tapping on wood, patient and steady. Rose swallowed hard. Then why didn't they call first? Neither moved for a full minute. Then Daniel took a deep breath and walked toward the door. Every step he took made the floorboards creak under his weight. He reached for the handle, hesitated, and then slowly pulled the door open. The porch was empty, but in the snow leading away from the cabin were 2 sets of footprints, one going out into the forest and one coming in. Daniel stared at the footprints, his heart pounding against his ribs. The fresh snow around them glistened in the weak porch light, untouched except for the 2 paths, one heading toward the dense forest, the other vanishing into the darkness beneath the cabin's roof. Rose's breath came in sharp, shallow bursts as she stepped closer, pointing at the prints. "They're real," she whispered. "Someone's been here, or is still here." Daniel swallowed, trying to steady his nerves. Maybe it's just someone hiking, lost in the storm. But even as he said it, the words sounded hollow. There was no sound of movement outside. No crunching snow. No shifting trees. Nothing. Only silence, like the forest itself was holding its breath. They decided to check the rest of the cabin. Each room seemed untouched for years, but with small, unsettling details that made their skin crawl. A chair slightly out of place. A window cracked open despite no wind